Good morning. On behalf of agcareers.com, I would like to thank you for joining us for our web seminar, Understanding Canadian Job Offer Packages. My name is Bonnie Johnson with agcareers.com. I will be serving as moderator for today's webinar. Our presenter will break down the modern job offer, go over the vast benefits available, what they mean, and how to determine what's best for you. We are pleased to have Carolyn Lee as our presenter today. I will more formally introduce her and turn things over momentarily, but I'd like to briefly review a few housekeeping items. A copy of the presentation is available in the handouts pane in your GoToWebinar control panel. Feel free to download this for note-taking or future reference. Your lines are muted to help with timing and flow of the presentation. If you have an immediate question, we ask that you use the chat box that is part of your GoToMeeting panel. I will monitor those questions closely and try to address them as soon as possible with Carolyn. During the presentation, the slides will move automatically as the presenter shares the content. Please move your mouse around every once in a while to keep it from going into sleep mode. If for some reason you have to shut down or do have problems, you can rejoin the workshop. You just need to follow the same process to get started as before. Finally, after the workshop, I will be sending an electronic evaluation form. If you could fill that out, we'd really appreciate it. Okay, that should be everything. Please allow me to introduce our presenter, Carolyn Lee. Carolyn is the Talent Solutions Manager for agcareers.com in our Canadian office and has been with the company for 7 years. In that time, she has worked with both employers and job seekers, providing tools to connect candidates with career opportunities in agriculture. Carolyn holds a bachelor's degree from Queen's University and a master's degree in biochemistry from the University of Calgary, and she is currently completing the Career Development Practitioner Program at Conestoga College. In addition to career development, Carolyn has also coached high-performance athletes and represented Canada in the sport of field hockey. Carolyn has always been passionate about helping individuals maximize their potential and helping identify the opportunities that are available to them. And with that, I will now turn it over to Carolyn to give us some valuable insights on job offer packages.
Great, thank you, Bonnie. Since Bonnie already introduced me, I'll just get right started on understanding job offer packages in Canada. And to get started, here are some questions that you may be asking yourself after you receive a job offer. Is this the salary that I deserve? How does PTO compare to paid vacation or sick time? And why in the world do I need to think about retirement plans right now? And looking over a job offer can be mind-boggling to someone in these changing times as well. So how can you be sure you're getting a good offer if you feel like it's in another language? So in this webinar for job seekers or for those looking for a little more understanding around their salary and benefits package, I will break down the modern job offer in an easily understandable way. I will go over the vast number of benefits available, what they mean, and how to determine what is best for you. Furthermore, an analysis of compensation and job details will increase your confidence. So to break it down, we're going to go through an analysis of the modern job offer, determining the best job offer package, comparing and understanding the many different benefits, how to evaluate your cost of living, and how to negotiate a job offer package. So when do you receive a job offer, and how do you position yourself to receive that job offer? The job search process can be lengthy, involved, and sometimes feel very complicated. If you've done the work to fine-tune your resume, your cover letter, and create job or profiles on job boards, and market yourself via LinkedIn and other social media channels, you've hopefully been able to secure that interview. And the purpose of the interview is for the employer to meet you, ask some questions about your skills and qualifications, and determine if you might be a good fit, not only for the position, but also for the company in general. It is also the opportunity for you as the candidate to do the same. Ensure you ask questions to determine if the role and the company will be the right fit for you. And we'll cover more of this further in the webinar with regards to what information you should be looking for in an employer, especially when it comes to the job offer stage. If the employer and position seem to be a good match for you, then really the end goal of the interview is to secure a job offer. And then receiving a job offer is not the end of the process at all. And for the purposes of this webinar, we will start in the interview, where you should be trying to secure that job offer. So during the interview, you might be asked about salary in an interview, and you may be asked about your current salary. The majority of HR professionals in Canada do not ask this question, but will likely ask your salary expectations. It's generally accepted that current salary or salary history is confidential information. However, if asked, and if you are comfortable telling them, your answer should be honest. And whatever number you tell them, be sure to explain what that number represents. For instance, if you state your last year's gross pay total, then tell them what portion of that represents base salary, commission, bonus, etc. By giving a few more details, the employer can better understand your pay structure and make comparisons to theirs. Never include the value of benefits or perks, such as insurance or car allowance or things like that. However, if you're not comfortable with this question, I suggest answering the question by stating, well, my salary expectations are ... And likely you will be asked what your expected pay would be. And you can always say that you're open and allow the employer to make the call as to what your expectations are. They obviously have a budget in mind, and you'd be simply making a guess to hit a number within their projected salary range. If you choose to state a desired salary, understand that you should ask for a little more than you want, but within reason. You don't want to turn the employer off with a number that is much too high. And if you feel your current salary is competitive, a good rule of thumb is 10% more than your current salary. And it's best to give a specific salary number and not a range, because saying you want between two numbers suggests you're willing to go lower than the number you really want. It's never a good idea to begin the negotiations for being hired in an interview. I always say to you, take it one step at a time. Always let the employer bring up questions about start date, appropriate title, anticipated salary, benefits, etc. It is rare that you'd be offered a job while conducting an interview, but it does happen. And I suggest never accepting an offer immediately. Ask for the details of the offer to be presented to you in writing, and give yourself at least a night's sleep to think it over, no matter how badly you want that job. And so how do you set yourself up to receive a job offer? And simply ask for the job in the interview. This starts with your enthusiastic attitude during the interview, your show of interest by being well prepared with knowledge about the company and its culture, and then asking what the next step is when leaving the interview. By asking about the next step, you are opening the door for the employer to tell you their next intended move. Sometimes they will say they will draw up an offer for you, but if not, you will leave with a good idea of their decision timeline. Job offer letters are legal documents, so think carefully before you sign on the dotted line. Once you've signed the offer letter, it will be hard to bring forth any changes to it. Once you've secured the job offer, it is crucial that you first ask for an appropriate amount of time to consider the offer. Be sure to emphasize your gratitude and interest in the job, and then ask if there is a deadline by which you need to make a decision. Asking for up to a week to decide is acceptable to most employers. However, see what time frame they give you first. If you feel you need more time than they offer, explain to the employer that you would prefer having until, pick a specific date, reassuring them that you don't have other offers on the table, but that you want to carefully consider their offer and read everything over in detail. Then evaluate the entire compensation package, not just salary. Consider all of the benefits and perks, the time you would spend traveling, and evaluate the company culture, which is something I'll discuss in detail a bit more later. Everyone has a different set of personal circumstances with differing needs when it comes to salary, work hours, culture, duties, commuting, etc. It's imperative that you examine everything included in the job offer package to ensure you fully understand what you're being offered and if there are any aspects that might not work for you. Note that if there are agreements to be signed or certain terms and conditions as a contingent part of the offer, Sometimes these are mentioned but not provided at the offer stage. You want full disclosure of what those are and being able to review them before moving forward. First, look at all of the elements of the job offer and know what might be negotiable. The basic job offer package in Canada includes the compensation, which would be the salary or wage per hour, including bonus, incentive, or commission, vacation or sick day entitlement, plus extended health benefits if available, hours of work, job title duties, and extra perks that could be included, and this list is quite big, so I'll just name a few potential elements that could be included. Tuition reimbursement, pension plan, profit sharing, health or gym memberships, parking reimbursement, cell phone, vehicle allowance, or company vehicle, flexible work hours, relocation reimbursement, signing bonus, etc. Additionally, there could be other legally binding documents, such as a non-compete or non-disclosure agreement. They may also be mentioned. So compensation. Typically, the compensation package, depending on the role, could be listed as an annual salary or an amount paid monthly, biweekly, or bi-monthly. Or it might be listed as a wage per hour, depending on the type of role. Outside of base rate of pay, compensation could also include bonus, commission, and or incentive structure. And what do these terms even mean? Bonuses are stated compensation amounts. They may vary for individual employees and can be represented by a percentage or a fixed amount. For example, 4% of base salary or a round number such as $10,000. It's important to note that bonuses do not have to be structured as all or nothing payments. If quota or performance objectives are not met, employees can earn a percentage of their bonus eligibility, which can help to keep morale up. Commission, on the other hand, the total compensation amount will vary based on an individual sales rep performance. Sales teams are presented with a percentage, for example, 6% of sales revenue, which they will earn for every sale they make. Once they've reached their sales quota, this rate often increases to encourage overperformance. And incentives. Generally speaking, an incentive bonus is part of your overall compensation. It sets a target percentage of your base pay to be paid to you as a bonus if you meet specific performance goals. Often your incentive bonus is determined partly by the company's performance and partly by your own. So all of these terms are related, and I would say their definitions maybe overlap a little bit, but they are distinct entities. So paid time off, vacation, and or sick days are legislated by law in your province. There are minimum requirements that your employer needs to meet. For example, in Ontario, under the Employment Standards Act, the ESA, most employees with less than 5 years of employment are entitled to receive 2 weeks of vacation for each 12 months of employment, whether or not active. Most employees with less than 5 years of employment are also entitled to vacation pay equal to at least 4% of the wages earned during that year. Most employees with 5 years or more of employment are entitled to receive 3 weeks of vacation for each 12 months of employment and vacation pay to at least 6% of the wages earned that year. However, some employees work in jobs that are not covered by the ESA's vacation with pay provisions. One other example is personal emergency leave or sick days. In Ontario, employees are entitled to up to 10 personal emergency leave days per year as soon as they start working for an employer. The first 2 days of the leave in each calendar year are paid if the employee has been employed for 1 week or longer. An employee who missed part of a day to take the leave would be entitled to any wages they actually earned while working, in addition to personal emergency leave pay for any leave taken. It is important to point out that many employers offer more than what is provincially regulated. and if not, is one aspect of the job offer package that is commonly negotiated. Many employers will refer to an extended health benefits package in the job offer. Sometimes the job offer letter is accompanied by another document detailing the health benefits option offered by the employer. Some employers provide this information after the offer letter is signed. In Canada, this usually covers prescription drugs, dental, vision, medical supplies and appliances, paramedical services, in addition to life insurance, extended sick leave, disability leave coverage, and other coverages. It can be difficult to extensively go over all of the potential options that can be included in an extended health benefits package, as they're dependent upon the employer and the insurance company that the employer uses. Packages, though, will include a portion usually that is paid by the employer and a portion paid by the employee. The employee portion is usually deducted from the employee's pay, and it is important to read through the benefits package to understand how much the employer covers and how much you would be covering. And coverage can range from a percentage of the total cost of the product or service to full 100% coverage of the product or service. If full details of the extended health benefits are not provided with the offer letter, it is appropriate to ask for that to be provided for your review. Don't underestimate the value of this benefits package, and be sure you understand all of it before deciding to sign an offer of employment. Many of the other perks that could be included in a job offer are specific to the employer and often reveals a lot about their culture. I've listed a few of these here, and it is really an individual preference as to how valuable these perks would be to you in considering the total compensation package. Relocation costs are typically yours to absorb unless the employer has indicated otherwise. Relocation reimbursements normally are not offered at the entry level. Some employers will agree to cover the most basic moving and relocation costs, such as the cost of a truck rental and your mileage in getting to your new location. However, full relocation packages that include full service movers, house buyouts, realtor fees, mortgage buy-downs, and other perks will likely come later in your career. Many of these perks I will discuss again later in the webinar when we talk about negotiating the job offer. So in Canada, I just wanted to touch on this topic of RRSP versus RPP. Some employers will include an RRSP or RPP package with the job offer package. Many people in Canada are familiar with the Registered Retirement Savings Plan, the RRSP. When an RRSP program is offered through your employer, it is called a group RRSP. Your plan contributions are usually automatically deducted from your pay before tax, and your employer may match or add to your contributions. So I always highly recommend to candidates that this is a plan that group RSP is not offered by every employer, and it really is a very valuable perk, especially if the employer matches contributions. The employer usually pays the cost of opening and managing the plan, and you would pay the investment cost. The range of investment options is usually limited depending on where the group RRSP is held. And the rules for when and how much money you can take out of the plan vary depending on your employer and the plan provider. An RPP is a pension plan under which employers and employees, or employers only, make contributions to a retirement fund. There are two types of RPPs, not to get into too much detail here, money purchase and defined benefit plans. But generally speaking, there's less flexibility with moving money out of an RPP if you leave the employer. But be sure to understand the type that's included in your offer, and maybe get external advice if you're not sure exactly what the details mean with your RRSP or RPP plan. So let's talk about agreements, clauses, and provisions that could be part of your job offer. Non-compete and non-disclosure agreements or clauses are becoming increasingly common components of the job offer package. At one time, they were reserved for high-level executives with access to trade secrets. But with technology more prevalent than ever, and the workplace being much more mobile, employers are concerned about preventing the technical and intellectual property they have developed from being copied by others. So what exactly are these agreements? Non-compete agreements mean you agree to not directly compete with the company or former employer within a reasonable length of time and within geographic limits after leaving the employer for whatever reason. Non-disclosure or confidentiality agreements mean you agree to not disclose things the company may consider to be proprietary or confidential. This does not mean you cannot work for a competitor. It just means that you will not use any of that confidential information you learned or obtained from the company, your former employer, with your new employer. So to sign or not sign, whether or not you should sign the agreements depends on how badly you want the job. Be cautious. You should review the agreements closely to decide how reasonable they are and if they would be legally binding. Laws governing these agreements vary province by province, but generally they are enforceable within reason. Know what you're signing. As tempting as it may be to quickly glance over and sign these agreements, be sure you fully understand the terms and consult a lawyer if you're unsure. And remember, once you leave the job, either on your own to go to another job, or if you're terminated, or if your position is eliminated, you will still be legally bound by these terms. If the job offer you receive states that these agreements are conditions of employment, but copies of these agreements have not been provided to you, ask to have the documents sent to you for review. And let's back up for a second. Is it possible that you have signed a non-compete agreement for your current job? Before moving any further with the job offer in hand, check to see if you have such an agreement in place with your current employer. It's possible that you might have signed it when you were hired and you have forgotten. Check your files or with HR if you have to before assuming you are in the clear. If you find that you do have one in place, it's a good idea to consult a lawyer for advice on how the contract might restrict or impact your plans before moving forward. If you find that you do have a non-compete in place, immediately disclose this to the employer-to-be. They may be able to tailor your new role to be outside of the non-compete restrictions. Also, they will often ask their own attorney if the non-compete is legally enforceable. Another agreement to be on the lookout for is a non-solicit agreement or clause, which is viewed as more flexible than a non-compete agreement. This agreement states you agree not to solicit the employer's customers for a certain period after leaving the company. Should you decide to one day quit your job and start your own business using the relationships you've built with your employer's customers, this agreement could bring serious consequences upon you. Arbitration clauses are a final provision to watch out for in an offer letter. Such clauses state that any disputes that arise between an employee and employer must be settled by a neutral third party. This might not sound like a big deal when you're about to start a new job, as you don't see any legal issues on the horizon. But by accepting an offer that includes this clause, you will be giving up your right to sue the employer over job-related issues such as wrongful termination, breach of contract, and discrimination. You might be wondering if any of these agreements, clauses, and provisions are negotiable. That likely depends on how good you are at negotiating. If you are being recruited for the role, you have more leverage than if you applied for the job on your own. You might be able to make the terms of the agreement more favorable by narrowing the definition of what the employer defines as competitive conduct, shortening the duration, or limiting the geographic scope. You can ask to have the arbitration clause removed from the offer letter, but use caution. You may be jeopardizing the offer if the employer requires the arbitration clause to be signed. Some employers will negotiate this point if they're very excited to have you join the company. They may allow you to refuse to sign rather than give you up as an employee altogether. However, more often than not, these agreements are non-negotiable. So in order to evaluate a job offer, you must first know your value. Let's talk about how to go into job offer negotiations in a position of strength, ensuring you want the job, weighing the pros and cons, and taking into consideration the employer's needs and limitations. To determine if the initial offer is acceptable, approach it like a balance sheet. Take a sheet of paper and do a simple pros and cons list. On the one side, reasons for or pros, and on the other side, reasons against or cons. Then go about listing the positives and the negatives of the job offer in their respective columns. Be careful to evaluate everything against the next best acceptable alternative, not against what you want. Keep in mind the next best acceptable alternative will likely be your current job, but it could also be another job offer or even unemployment. Don't let what you want come into play as you evaluate this offer, because at this point, that is not an option from which to choose. Once everything is down on paper, the answer whether the offer is acceptable becomes much more obvious. If you find that the offer is acceptable, you'll want to move forward with a formal acceptance. However, if the offer is unacceptable, you will want to use careful negotiation techniques to potentially improve this offer. When it comes to salary, if you have no idea what you should be making, you can search online on sites like PayScale or Glassdoor. Maybe you've recently spoken with a recruiter or someone else in your field that can give you salary info as well. Set a range that you feel is reasonable and be willing to accept an offer within that range. Also have a walk-away number in mind. This is a number that you should come up with, and it may depend on financial need, market value, or simply what would make you feel good about accepting, and any offer below this number would be turned down. Cost of living is also an important factor to take into consideration when evaluating your value. If you'll be relocating, you definitely want to take into account the amount of money needed to sustain a certain level of living. Cost of living is a measurement that takes into account the standard cost of housing, gas, food, clothing, and other everyday items in a certain location. Once again, PayScale is a useful website for cost of living comparisons. So understanding the employer. Learn what's negotiable and what isn't, and that includes the types and sizes of employers. If you've been honest and answered questions about salary expectations going into the interview, then hopefully the employer will be offering a salary that is in line with your expectations. If the employer does give an offer below what you specified, it is up to you to decide whether the amount you specified was truly your walk-away number. If it is, then when it comes time to ask for a higher salary, you do need to be prepared to walk away if need be. If you're comfortable with the salary but it's lower than you expected, then you should really examine the other aspects of the job offer to learn what might be negotiable to help make the offer more attractive to you. To start, ask yourself, what type of employer is it? Is the employer a public sector employer? For example, public sector positions usually have set pay grade ranges and vacation entitlements that are difficult to negotiate. How many employees does the employer have, and is the employer in an industry that is currently seeing a lot of growth? Understanding these points will help you go into potential negotiations with managed expectations. If the potential employer is a small nonprofit with only 5 employees, it is unlikely that there will be much room to negotiate salary and benefits. However, they could be open to flexible work hours or additional time off. If possible, turn to your network to see if you're connected with anyone who currently works for the employer or who has worked for them in the past. Also look at online reviews of the employer to see if you can gain any insight into the culture and what aspects of the job offer may be open for negotiation. How to negotiate salary. If your offer is truly unacceptable, you must communicate this while keeping a position of hopeful resolution. This is known as making a counteroffer. Keep in mind that you will be putting at risk the job offer made to you, and the whole deal could fall through. From a legal aspect, the initial offer becomes essentially invalid when a counteroffer is made. To begin the negotiation, you will want to communicate to the decision maker, this is key, specifically what is lacking in the offer, and then offer a proposed solution. You're making it clear that if this could be changed, then you would be willing to accept the position on the spot. This shows the employer that without any hesitation, if they're willing to remove that roadblock, you will gladly go to work for them. And on the other hand, if they cannot accommodate your proposal, you are saying you will not accept the offer. And here's an example of what you can say. I remain very interested in working with you and your company. However, at this point, I am not able to accept the offer for the following reasons. And state your reasoning succinctly and what parts are lacking. If you are able to blank, offer a solution, I would gladly accept the position immediately. Are you able to help bring this about? And notice the question at the end. You are appealing to them because you know they have the power to make the change needed. Who doesn't like to admit they have the power to make a change? So if the manager has the power to get it done, they will do what they can to make it happen. The employer may not be able to adjust the offer for varying reasons. Some companies have a policy of not negotiating offers of employment. Others have rigid offer guidelines when it comes to salary and paid time off, like I mentioned before, especially for entry-level positions, so there cannot be adjustments. Or maybe the magnitude of your request would not be comparable to others on the team who have similar background and skills, so the company is not willing to accommodate your request. While salary is the primary focus of most offer negotiations, keep in mind that negotiating salary could easily reach the unacceptable range and put the job offer at risk. So tread carefully when approaching the topic. You can state that you're hoping for more and then ask questions that relate to future salary, such as what is the average increase being given, when are increases given, how often, and is that based on performance reviews. In attempting to modify salary, often the best approach is to look for a promise for tomorrow. A creative way to ask for an early increase in salary is to ask for an earlier performance review. You can ask if your offer can include an earlier review, say in 6 months versus 12 months, to ensure you're learning the details of the job. This not only shows that you're conscientious and want to get feedback on your performance, but it also creates an opportunity to open up the discussions around an earlier raise and or bonus. Remember I mentioned earlier that approaching the decision maker for the negotiation is key. If the person you are communicating with about the job offer does not have the authority to negotiate or make changes, do not attempt to negotiate with them. Simply approach them by asking for advice. What would you recommend? Or how would you recommend? Questions will keep from putting them in an uncomfortable position of not being able to respond. This person may not have the authority to accommodate your request, but they may be able to unlock some doors in helping you negotiate. If the job offer is acceptable, but you would like to improve certain elements of it, the best approach is to take a minimal risk approach. The key to this technique is to accept the position and then ask for assistance in meeting for your further needs, essentially locking in your acceptance and leaving open some additional concessions that may be given to you at no cost. The acceptance would sound something like this. I'm calling you with good news. I would like to accept your offer and I'm looking forward to working with you and becoming a valuable member of your team. You wait for a positive response. I'm committed to working with you, and as my future boss, there are 2 minor issues about the offer that I want to make you aware of. I don't know if you're able to make the changes in these areas, but I'd surely appreciate you looking into the possibility. Specifically, would it be possible to blank name the changes? This closes out the acceptance portion, ensuring you keep the one thing you cannot afford to lose, the job, while leaving a window open for your new manager to use his or her power to accommodate your requests, typically non-monetary in nature. Note that this technique should not be used for significant offer changes. If you want to make any major changes to your offer, you will need to follow through with the unacceptable offer negotiation technique previously described. If the salary or wage can't be negotiated, what are other items acceptable to negotiate? Some companies offer health club reimbursements, parking reimbursements, cell phone or other expense reimbursements. If these are important to you and are not included in your offer, depending on the position that you are in the running for, you can ask for them to be added. Paid time off and vacation is one benefit that can be negotiated in many situations. Many companies set a specified amount of time before an employee can gain more paid time off, and this is something that could be negotiated depending on the amount of experience you have, the size of the company, industry, and sector. Ask the employer about business hours. Do they offer flexible work hours? Is overtime negotiable? What are their policies regarding overtime? Simply asking these questions will let you know if the employer is open to a flexible schedule. The job title has likely been known throughout the interview process, but if it suddenly changes when documented on a job letter offer, it would be appropriate to question that and ask the reasons for the change, and perhaps suggest another title be used. Another instance where asking for a change in job title is appropriate is if you feel the responsibilities of the role have changed as a result of your conversations with the employer. If that's the case and it has not already been discussed, it would be appropriate to request a change in title. Does the job offer include any professional development or training support? And how about education reimbursement? Pick one or two from this list. However, asking for more than a couple of considerations is generally looked upon as inappropriate. Remember that the offer could be rescinded should the employer be turned off by your request. So how to close the negotiation? There are really only two options at this point: accepting the offer as it stands after negotiation or declining the offer. At this point, you must be willing to stand by your decision. And for accepting the offer, it's always a good idea to accept the job offer in writing. An email is fine. A job acceptance letter allows you to demonstrate your professionalism and ensures there's no confusion regarding the terms of the offer. It's also a great opportunity to express gratitude for being offered the position and your enthusiasm for your new role. Your letter can be brief, but here are some basics that should be included. Thank you and appreciation, expressed acceptance of the job offer, reference the job title, salary, and the starting date of employment. Put your name in the subject line, your name and job offer acceptance, to ensure it's opened promptly. You should also ensure to address the letter to the person who offered you the position. Attach a signed copy of the offer letter, if requested, and ask if anything is needed from you before the start date so you can ensure you know what is expected of you, if anything, prior to the start date. And final thoughts, proofread. You do not want to create any last-minute reasons for an employer to rescind their offer, such as a sloppy or unprofessional letter. And declining job offers. Even if you're desperately seeking employment, if a job offer does not seem like it will be a good fit, it might make sense to decline. Similar to accepting an offer, declining an offer should also happen via letter to ensure there is little room for confusion. Send your rejection letter to the person who offered you the position as soon as possible after making your decision. Write a polite letter expressing your gratitude for the opportunity they've extended to you. If you found that the job didn't appeal to you or your interests, but you liked the company, you might inquire about further potential opportunities. If it is both the job and the company, then generally a vague reference to the job not being a good fit for you at this point in your career would suffice. If you've negotiated with the prospective employer, but they still cannot meet your minimum requirements, Then send a letter expressing your thanks and reaffirming how excited you were for the opportunity, but that you need to decline due to the offer not meeting your expectations. If you are open to talking to the employer later in your career, you can state that you are hopeful that another opportunity with them might arise later on, and you'd be open to discussing that with them. And once again, proofread to ensure you are delivering a polite and professional message to leave a lasting impression. There is a lot of information to consider when you receive a job offer. We've gone through some of the elements of a standard job offer in addition to some extra perks and elements that could also be included. The details of the offer and what is of most importance to you is really what you must determine. But I have a few main takeaway points that are relevant to everyone, regardless of the details of the job offer, and will help you evaluate and potentially negotiate your offer effectively. Always ask for time. Job offer packages can be complicated, and most employers will expect that you need to take time to evaluate their offer. Ask the employer if they have an expected time frame when they want to hear from you. If you don't feel that it's enough time, you can ask for more and be specific about letting them know when you will respond. Know your value. While evaluating your offer, ensure you know what you believe you should be paid. Check pay scale or other salary benchmarking tools and understand the cost of living in your area and what others are paid for in similar positions. Be clear in your mind with what your expectations are. Thoroughly read through the entire offer. Be sure you understand everything that is included. This will be crucial in knowing whether the entire package includes what you're looking for, and also helps you understand what elements could be negotiated if you're not completely satisfied with the entire offer. This also includes any clauses, non-compete, or non-solicitation agreements. These can be very tedious documents, but the time to read them is before you sign on the dotted line. And understand the employer and who they are. This will help you determine whether the company would be a good fit for you, but it will also help you understand what parts of the job offer are negotiable and which elements may not be negotiable. This includes the type, industry, size of company, as well as company culture if you're able to determine that. Then negotiate carefully and conscientiously. Remember the points previously when I discussed whether an offer is acceptable or not acceptable to you, and always communicate from a position of positivity and enthusiasm. Do not try to negotiate too many elements at one time, but focus your efforts on the elements that really will make a difference for you in the offer. And finally, always either accept or decline the offer professionally and always in writing. Proofread your responses and ensure you are courteous, grateful for the opportunity, and leave a good impression, even if you are declining their offer. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Carolyn. We did have one question come in that we'll address here shortly. I just wanted to open it up to everyone. If you do have a question, feel free to type that into the question or the chat pane, and we will address it. Carolyn, the question that came in was the two options stated during the negotiation stage, making the changes. Can you go back and forth in writing instead of over the phone?
Well, that's a good question. I think sometimes it does depend on the employer, and it depends on how detailed the changes or negotiation would be. I've heard of negotiations happening over the phone, but then whatever the outcome of the negotiation is, any relevant changes would need to be done in writing within the job offer and still passed in writing. So I would say it depends on how complicated of a change you want to make. I always suggest if you can discuss something over the phone, it's sometimes easy to kind of have a bit more of an open conversation, and it may be resolved more quickly. Regardless of whether you do negotiate over the phone or over email, whatever changes will still need to be documented in a job offer, and the job offer would need to be changed in writing. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carolyn. One more question. What factors could make a contract unenforceable by Canadian courts?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic because it does change for every scenario. In Canada, it's increasingly becoming more apparent that non-compete agreements are not necessarily looked upon as favorably by Canadian courts, and they do sometimes seem to prefer maybe a non-solicitation agreement instead, which is less restrictive. So it seems that the Canadian courts do not like to limit employees' employment prospects too much. So it has to be within reason, and every case is a little bit different. So courts can find that some of those agreements can be too restrictive for an employee to be able to find reasonable employment within a certain amount of time after they're either terminated or leave from their own choice. And in that case, many times non-competes may be loosened a little bit. Geographic limitations could be changed, or courts could order that it become a non-solicitation agreement instead of a compete. So there are no hard and fast rules about that, but in Canada, they're becoming a little less strict with those agreements. Now, in saying that, I still think it's very important to be very careful when you sign a job offer with those agreements in place, and always assume that they will be enforceable as opposed to assuming that they won't be and still signing it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carolyn. I would want to encourage you all that if you do have further questions, feel free to email us at agcareers@agcareers.com, or Carolyn has her information there as well, and we'd be happy to help you out with that. Thank you, Carolyn, for being our presenter. We hope you've all found this information valuable as you go about your career search. If you haven't already done so, we encourage you to set up your free job seeker account on agcareers.com. You're able to upload your resume to our database, save jobs, set up job alerts, track your application history, and much more. Also encourage you to subscribe to our blog, Career Cultivation, which can give you some other helpful insights on the job search and career progression process, and then also our weekly e-newsletter if you're not already a member of that. Please watch your email inbox for your follow-up evaluation. We'd appreciate your feedback on today's webinar. And thank you for attending this agcareers.com job seeker webinar. Have a fantastic day, everyone.